Amish Adventure, Chapter 3. Huge, empty packing boxes crouched around Ian, looking like faceless intruders. Tomorrow they would be filled with household goods and stacked in some dark, airless warehouse. Then the apartment where they had lived for over a year would be deserted. Ian stared out of the 17th floor window at the treeless sky. The red autumn sun far below was sinking behind a row of toy-like blocks of buildings. A fat pigeon that always came for seed when Ian scattered on the outside grilled-in porch pecked unknowingly at his last meal there. After purchasing a securely locked cage to pacify Mrs. Coots, Ian had finally had to return Angel to Mr. Riddle. A well of misery had been simmering inside Ian for the last 3 weeks. He tried to hide it, like clamping a lid over his heart, but today it seemed to rise into a steam of anger and despair. It had to spill out somewhere. He searched for his father and found him bent in his usual lean, angular way over his desk of littered books and papers. Ian stood in front of him, miserable and defiant. "I won't go," he shouted abruptly. He had been trying for the past 3 weeks to be understanding of his father's job. "I won't live with Aunt Clem in that creepy old house in Toronto. I don't care if she's our only close relative. You promised I could go with you. I've always gone with you." Ian's father looked up, red-eyed and weary. "What's happened to you, Ian?" he sighed. "I thought we settled this whole problem 3 weeks ago. You don't think I want to be separated from you either, do you? I wanted us to share this experience." Andrew MacDonald rubbed his eyes. Then he relaxed into the banter and kidding that usually ended with both of them laughing. "Come on, Ian. Red-haired Scotsmen have to keep their tempers from boiling up or they'll sound like a flock of screeching blue jays." It didn't work. Ian was too upset. What was the point of spending all those nights looking at maps and reading Frozen Fire and People of the Deer, he stormed. "You said it would be the experience of a lifetime to live in the North. We were going to meet some of the Inuit and see the midnight sun. Now you're going without me. It isn't fair." "Ian," his father was cross, "I've had to say this far too often. The company has an emergency and they need me at once. I also have my own urgent concerns about the environment up there. They won't let you come with me and that's final. I'm sorry, but it's either Aunt Clem's house or a boarding school." Ian groaned, remembering the many new schools he had attended because of Dad's traveling job. It wasn't easy to make new friends in them. Lately he'd been getting bad grades, and his Chicago school in the winter had crowded classes, but at least he could look forward to evenings with Dad, who would read aloud at Aunt Clem's, who would play chess with him before bedtime. Where was he going to find another friend like Tony? If Mrs. Coots had walked into this shoveled apartment at this moment, she probably would have made some tart comment about red hair, Scottish background, quick tempers, and stubborn wills. Most of Ian MacDonald's ancestors had left their native highlands in Scotland to migrate to the forests of Ontario and the untamed banks of Lake Erie. They were determined, frugal, honest, and hard-working people. They cleared the forests and built farm homes to last forever. But Andrew MacDonald had left the farm before he went to university to become an engineer. He had not gone back. In fact, he never talked about his rural youth. Ian continued to stand obstinately before his father. "All right," he said, trying to soften the attack. "I'm glad you work for the oil company. I'm glad you try to save the environment, but I still want to go with you." Andrew MacDonald looked with concern at his tall, thin, 12-year-old son. He sat with Ian on top of one of the packing boxes and placed a strong arm around his shoulders. "Look, it'll only be for 6 months," he said. Ian's head began to ache and a great lump filled his throat. He hid both of them with muffled comments. "I won't have any friends in the new school. Even Aunt Clem is like a stranger. And all those antiques in her house make the place seem haunted." "Nonsense," Andrew MacDonald smiled. "I know Aunt Clem isn't the easiest person to live with. She's strong-willed and outspoken, but her house is solid and warm and it isn't haunted. You might even get to like it." Ian didn't answer. "You'll be good for her, Ian. She's been a lonely widow since Uncle Malcolm was killed in the World War II. "Dad," Ian interrupted, "that was years and years ago." But he felt defeated. He couldn't even go and talk with Tony. The Tobolis were in Italy on holiday and he and Tony had said goodbye last week. "Now, no more arguments, Ian." His father held him close for a brief moment. I worry about you a great deal. Now off to bed at once. I'll see you first thing in the morning. Jack Turner from the company is coming at 7 o'clock to drive you to Toronto. Ian started down the hall to his bedroom. So he was a great worry to his father. Was that all? He felt suddenly abandoned, like the unwanted rag doll he had seen a girl in the apartment building throw down the garbage chute. For the first time in his life, he really resented his father. Why couldn't he make the people at the oil company change their minds? Didn't Dad want him on the jobs anymore? Even the apartments seemed hostile. It was no longer their home. Mrs. Coots had already found a new job in the building next door. I'll leave the place as clean and empty as when you came, she had promised. Empty. Ian hung on the word. He felt deserted and empty, like reaching for a glass of water with a dreadful thirst and finding nothing inside.